Just over 1 month ago, I woke up with no feeling in my fourth and fifth finger, my pinky and my ring finger. I had a numb, tingling sensation, kind of like if you slept on your arm in the wrong way and you woke up and it stung and you had to walk around or move around or sling it uncomfortably. You couldn't really tell where it was in space, but you had a sense that some part of your body existed and no longer was communicating appropriately with your brain. It turns out that I had, over the course of possibly a night or potentially many, many years, damaged and done what could be permanent damage to some nerves in my arm. The most common nerve damage in one's arm is called carpal tunnel syndrome. It affects the first 3 digits. It's a pinched nerve in your wrist and results in that same exact feeling. Tingling, numbness, a potential spike in pain, and eventually muscle retardation, a lack of motor control, and maybe even clenching or tightening of the fingers. Cubital tunnel syndrome is the exact same idea, except it deals with the nerve that runs through your little gap here in what people call the funny bone. If you ever bang your funny bone and you get that shiver kind of up and down your entire arm, well, that's the cubital tunnel nerve, I suppose, or that's the nerve that runs through the cubital tunnel here in your elbow. And this has to be one of the most common issues that's either not recognized, not considered, or experienced by people who do what I do. And I'm talking to you, board gamers, people who have a tendency to spend long amounts of time either sitting at a table or being in front of a computer or working in a digital space or a physical space. We stay here. And it was in this seat right here that I did the damage that caused a lot of trauma. I was leaning forward, right? Studying a game, working on a project, always and constantly putting pressure on my elbows. And from time to time shifting or moving things about, but always keeping them bent, tight. And one evening when I went too long, played too many games, worked way overtime on some edits for this channel, that's when it all happened. Now, in this video, I want to walk you through the research that I've done over the past month and a half to heal as much as possible from the pinched nerve from cubital tunnel syndrome. I want to talk about the items that I've picked up along the way, what's worked for me, what hasn't seemed to work as effectively, and the research that I've done. When I say research, I really mean that. I was downloading and printing out surgeon guidelines to see exactly where the nerve travels through and what they recommend, what the FDA and well, not the FDA, I suppose, but what the CDC recommends when it comes to current knowledge and treatment approaches. The reality is carpal tunnel syndrome has a lot more research about it. It's a more popular or more experienced nerve problem. However, cubital tunnel is the second highest. It's number 2 in the category of pinched nerves. And so there's a lot of people out there like me that were searching through Reddit and looking for answers and trying our best to find and seek solutions. Because right now, one of the only answers you get is either wait it out, be patient, and figure out ways to heal by not using your arm, or eventually get surgery. And probably delay surgery for as long as possible because the surgery is mixed. They actually have to remap the nerve, make it so it doesn't pass through that tiny gap in your funny bone, and instead bring it around the outside of that arm. It's hit or miss and can leave other trauma in its wake. It's also a giant freaking scar and would mess up all my tattoos, so there's no way I want to do that. Now, if you're like me, a board gamer, a video gamer, someone who spends a lot of time either on their phone or sitting in front of a desk, a computer, a table, you should be mindful about this. Because the way that cubital tunnel syndrome develops, the way that it appears is by similar repeated pressure or strain placed on the small little areas where nerves exist. And nerves are a funny category of body part. Unlike muscles that get sore and then rebuild, or ligaments that you can stretch and, get more and more elastic over time, nerves don't quite operate that same way. And once one is inflamed or pinched or squeezed or damaged, the restoration process doesn't look like doing large amounts of yoga. It doesn't look like, healing and then recovering. Nerve damage can be permanent. Nerve damage can also be an affliction that you have to be mindful of for the rest of your life. I will probably have in the back of my mind for a long time now the risk of cubital tunnel and eventually carpal tunnel in both of my arms. Not because I'm genetically predisposed, but simply because the type of work I do lends itself towards their development. If you're talking on your phone, meaning your arm is bent, if you're raising a camera up in the air, meaning you're doing this motion constantly, if you're sitting at a table leaning on your elbows, your parents probably should have taught you, keep your elbows off the table during dinner time. It's not appropriate. It's not regal or respectful. Well, it turns out they were just trying to save you from pinching a nerve in your funny bone. If you are playing a board game and you're sitting there in front and you're always constantly leaning or typing on a computer, and the pressure point, the area you rest your arm, that area, if it's in your elbow, has the risk of eventually having you wake up like me without feeling. And I mean that. I tried to wash the dishes and I couldn't figure out where my hand was positioned in the water. I could feel a sensation, a numbness, a tightening, and it was really, really difficult and really, really frustrating and anxiety-inducing and neurologically painful. Not physically painful at that moment, but my brain was screaming at the fact that I couldn't feel. I didn't have sensory input from these two things that I typically rely on for grabbing and grasping and moving around the world. So, how does cubital tunnel syndrome come about? Again, repeated, consistent use of your elbow. Now, what are the steps to heal, and what is the journey of healing like? The reason I'm doing this video is because I couldn't actually find a lot of good, helpful resources on this problem. There was a lot of people out there that had some Reddit threads with 5 or 6 different comments. There were some doctors out there that had written research papers and reports, and then I was redirected to carpal tunnel syndrome. And so I did research on pinched nerves, on this problem in a wider breadth, in a wider span, and tried my best to observe and experience the process of healing over the last month and a half. And that's a long time to not be sure if your fingers are getting better or worse. It's a long time to wonder if the new pain or the new tightness or the new squeeze seems to be a improvement in symptoms or a sign that my fingers are starting to curl and starting to clench in an awkward, uncomfortable way. So, the healing process, what did it look like? From day one, I knew I had a serious problem. My fingers were completely numb and tingly. I couldn't sense anything when it came in contact with them outside of a generalized buzzing, a generalized hum and spark and fire that wasn't painful but was very overstimulating and uncomfortable. For the first week or so, I found myself constantly limited and hampered by these fingers. I tried for a day or two to not move my arm, to not bend the elbow as much as possible, which is one of the recommendations that people have. I looked up exercises called nerve flossing exercises. Like I said, it's not quite the same as muscles and ligaments. Instead, nerves glide in between the areas that they exist in, and through stretching and doing exercises that specifically target those nerves and put tension or relax tension on them, you can then glide that nerve through areas that are tight or constricted. Well, I started doing those a little bit irregularly, but consistently enough to start to see some improvements. Every week I probably gained about 10 to 15% of feeling back into my fingers, but by week 2 or 3, I found that my fingers were starting to pinch uncomfortably, as if they were one, becoming weaker, which I think they certainly have, and two, as if they wanted to curl in. Like that, I could feel where that nerve ran through both my wrist, which is starting to spark with pain, and I could feel it, and still to this day can feel almost like a tension in the nerve that runs up my pinky finger and runs through the center of my ring finger on the inside. That tension is one of the things that I'm still working through and still figuring out how to adjust using some physical muscle and tension building exercises, and also using nerve flossing techniques, which I'll show you the ones that I've actually preferred here in just a moment. I started by purchasing two items. I purchased, of course, a arm brace, which is designed to prevent or limit the flexing of your elbow. This is extremely helpful because the multiple days that I tried not to move my elbow originally, I found my arm was becoming stiff. My arm was becoming extremely cold from lack of movement, from lack of blood flow, from not really using it. And I was concerned that I was going to actually develop other issues along the way. Initially, I used this just for sleeping, to keep my arm from bending when I was not aware, and prevent myself from tucking my arm underneath my head and sleeping, with it hooked under the pillow like I sometimes do. And then after about 5 or 6 days of using this while sleeping and seeing some improvements, but not enough that I was confident I was headed in the right direction, I wore this for almost a week daily, trying to spend the majority of my day limited in my motion to some degree. I'll leave a link to all these items, by the way, down below so that you can follow and pick up the ones that I've chosen for myself. I've really enjoyed this arm brace. It's comfortable. It doesn't slip if you tighten it well, and the way that the gears actually adjust the hook of your arm gives you a little bit of flexibility in how dynamic or how drastic your pose is. Just the act of not moving my elbow started the process of healing, started moving me forward in the direction of getting sensation back in those two fingers on the outside. I should still be wearing this at night. I'll be honest, over the last few nights I've been pulling more all-nighters than actually getting some sleep, but this is one of those items that potentially will have to be worn at least while I'm sleeping for the next 3, 4, 5 months. The healing process and the restoration and the decrease in swelling and numbness is something that happens very, very gradually over time. And so I don't want to risk sleeping in a poor position or doing something that messes up and removes all the progress that I've made so far. The other items that I picked up came from a lot of digging and research into cubital tunnel syndrome and what had worked for other people. Initially, Google redirected me to a Reddit thread, the cubital tunnel community, where one person had mentioned the Theraband flex bar, exercise wrist and forearm strengthening devices. I ordered a full set of them, and I've primarily used the red one actually, which I think is supposed to be the heavier one, but I could be wrong about that. The Theraband is designed for treating golfers' elbow or treating other damage that happens not specifically to the nerve, but to other areas of the arm. However, strengthening and reinforcing the muscles in your arm and getting your arm into a healthy, flexible, and non-inflamed state is part of the process of reducing and correcting for symptoms both in the immediate and in the future. Now, doing muscle exercises won't heal and even could risk exacerbating cubital tunnel syndrome or carpal tunnel syndrome. However, it can also be part of the process to keep your arm from tensing up too much. And restoring strength is part of the process of preventing future damage, along with a constant mindfulness and awareness of the pinched nerve itself. There's 2 exercises that were recommended, and there's 2 exercises that I've been doing on a every other day basis. The first one has you actually hold the bar kind of like this, and you reach, twist, pull, and then bring back or curl in, putting tension on this area of your arm, your forearm here. So again, I'm holding the bar kind of like this. I twist in. I'm grabbing with the hand that doesn't need the exercise. I'm twisting out, creating tension in the Theraband here in the center, and then I'm slowly letting my wrist pull back or curl in, which is allowing the tension here to release, tightening and strengthening and stretching that area that's inflamed. Now, if you happen to like twist like this and not do the exact motion that I've outlined, that the medical professionals outlined, I have found that it can trigger or spark or hurt a little bit. Whereas this motion, where you grab, twist, and then pull back in, seems to be more of a reactionary one where your muscles are just responding to the stress that's placed on them from the tension in the Theraband as opposed to an active use case. I don't know anything about that technically, but that's what it feels like to me, and it has felt good. It did seem to help, and there's been other testimonies online. Like I said, that Reddit thread was one of the first things that popped up that have insisted that the Therabands have been effective at helping at least restore and prevent future damage in this area. The other exercise that was recommended that I've been doing is a curve inward. Now, I try not to have my elbows bent too dramatically when I do this. I mean, I'm not hooking them up or anything, but this exercise helps strengthen the rotation and all these tiny muscles and ligaments that are supporting and surrounding that elbow and your wrist. That, of course, is the area where you have that pinched nerve, and so getting all of this healthy, getting all of this spry, seems to be an effective and worthwhile process. Nerve flossing was done in combination with the Theraband. They were ordered or discovered about the same time, whereas the other items that I have here were discovered a little bit later. The 3 nerve flossing exercises that I have found to be useful and non-traumatic, and there's a lot of them out there that you could explore, but the 3 that have seemed to work well for me and have been comfortable for the duration have been as follows. First off, creating a 90-degree angle and just doing a little bit of a rotation with your hand and your fingers. That's creating tension and releasing tension that goes up and down your arm. Now, the nerve actually comes down your shoulder here, so you can lean your head away or forward to release tension or add tension. And you shouldn't do any of these exercises, and this really is an exercise. You shouldn't do any of these if it's exasperating or creating large amounts of pain or increasing issues in your arms. Now, for instance, here, it is doing something, but in my arm that's not damaged currently, it doesn't feel like it's being very effective, but I can feel the tension in my pinky whenever I do the outward rotation here. My pinky right now has just a tiny twinge of you are adjusting the nerve. That nerve is responding to or feeling the movement that you're placing on it, the tension that you're placing on it. And that glossing idea is just slowly sliding that nerve back and forth just slightly so that it gets into a more comfortable position so that it doesn't continue to rub up against and become pinched and entrapped where it is in your elbow. The next flossing exercise that I enjoyed was creating a little bit of a relaxed posture here and then just pressing down very gently on those outer 2 fingers, the 4th and the 5th finger, and all that's doing again is stretching all the way up through here. You don't want to push too hard, and you don't want to do this again if you're causing any pain or lasting discomfort. But again, the same thing there, it feels great on this arm. This arm, I can feel it more in my forearm, and I feel like I want to apply more pressure than my fingers probably should withstand. The last exercise is something that I only recently started doing with the arm that has the nerve damage currently. If you ever, when you were a kid, went ahead and made your little eyeglasses and went back like this, you can actually do a nerve glossing exercise that creates tension because that pinky is spread and you're bringing it in and you're putting it over. So then I have all this tension now, all the way through my elbow, up my arm, into my pinky. Everything is extended, and I don't know. Yeah, lots of tension and even a spark of discomfort in my elbow there, so it's not something that I'm going to actually continue doing at the moment. I can feel that the nerve here in my right arm is a little bit oversensitive, and so these are exercises that I've been doing with both arms whenever I'm able or whenever I remember to operate. So if you have any, long periods of time where you're sitting with your elbows hooked or sitting at a table, maybe while you're there, just take the time to do some nerve flossing yourself to prevent future damage of this fairly common board gamer's disease. The next things that I picked up were from more research. So first off, I have a little acupuncture ball. This is a sensory stimulation ball. This has a ton of little spikes throughout it. And I use this to try to just get my brain to remap and understand where points of discomfort were and where I could actually feel. I've actually been tracking, and right now I still have a little bit, probably only about 50% of feeling at the tip of my pinky. It's tingling and numb, whereas other areas of my fingers have restored quite a bit of their feeling, and my palm and wrist have full feeling. I can feel every little spike. I use this ball to rub up and down to create little pricks of pain in my hand or in other areas of my body, and then also track and better understand, better psychologically read where the actual damage was happening and if it was decreasing or extending, because from day to day it can be very difficult to tell, are you getting better or are you getting worse? I also picked up this little pillow. This actually comes from a newborn photography set, but any little soft cushiony thing can do. And whenever I work now, or I'm in a position where I want to rest my arm, but I don't want to rest it on my elbow and I'm on a hard surface, I'll place this in a position that allows me to keep my arm extended and rested, but not actually leaning on my elbow at all and not hooking it or pulling it up in any direction. These little pillows have been great. They're enough that I could carry them around with me, and they're comfortable to sit and work on or type on. But there's lots of keyboards and lots of other things that do a very similar or have a very similar approach. I will note that most of them are for carpal tunnel syndrome, which has a pinched nerve in the wrist area. So the adjustments that you make for that might actually risk or exasperate a pinched nerve in your elbow. So keep that in mind. Now, the next stuff that I got and started to use was a heat pack. When I first did research, I discovered that ice packs were recommended, but it turns out that ice for a nerve is actually not the best thing that you could use to create lasting good healing. Instead, ice is good for pain management. It restricts and tightens and, cools everything down, I guess. It makes the area less sensory. Whereas heat can exasperate pain, even in a situation like this. I found it to be soothing, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be the case for you. However, heat is what we want. Heat is going to increase blood flow. It's going to relax the muscles. It's going to relax the tension and the tendons and everything that's running through this damaged, pinched area. Heat also will allow blood and other healing parts of your body to rush in and increase their movement through this space. And we want our body to be able to respond and act effectively. And so staying warm and warming up and healing these areas through deep thermal heat seems to be a very effective way. And for me, it was where I started to see the most significant change in the symptoms. I spent probably about 5 days applying heat multiple times a day through a water-based heat pack like this. And it not only helped take some of the pain away, but helped my fingers stop wanting to tense up as dramatically, helped my elbow relax. I even did it all the way up and down my forearm where I know that nerve is running and passing through. There are some current studies going on that involve deep, I want to say microwave, but microwave style or deep radiation style heat treatments for cubital tunnel syndrome. They're still, I think, experimental. They might actually be medicinal, but of course they're probably expensive and hard to come by. It involves, though, getting heat deep, deep, deep into this region of the arm, because most heat that you apply is just going to be surface level. One of the things that I did is I tried to not only expose my arm to a reasonable but not scorching level of heat and then leave it there for a long period of time so that warmth could soak in. Talking 10 to 15 minutes of prolonged dedicated heat moving all across my arm and all over these areas where the muscles, tendons, and nerve is pinched and tight. The next items that I picked up have to deal with my grip, because I can feel that these last two fingers just are not squeezing like they used to. not only do I still have a little bit of numbness, but I have tension that I wanted to start releasing. And that tension is from the nerve, but it's also from the muscles responding to the damage that they're currently experiencing, whether it's the underuse or the immobility, whether it's them trying to figure out how to operate well. You don't want your body to train itself around you being hurt. You can actually do more damage if you walk with a limp because your leg is hurt. You might discover that you've created shin splints for yourself or knee damage. So I wanted to start addressing and working on rehabilitating my grip while I was still healing. And of course, not doing anything that would hurt or create excess pain in my arm. I picked up 3 different ways of exercising the hands, wrists, and forearms. So far, my favorite has to be these rings. And again, I'll leave links down below, but I really like how satisfactory these are. And for a finger that is getting tight from constant use throughout the day, I find that this actually really helps to relieve some of that tension and just lets my finger feel like it's been stretched and worked. I'm not doing this enough that I feel sore, that any of my other fingers feel like they've been over-exercised, but it is like a gentle, relaxing massage. Along with these came the opposite type of exercise, and I find this exercise to be very difficult. I haven't even tried it in the hand with nerve damage yet. I will go ahead and give it a try right now on camera, but the idea here is to strengthen each individual finger through stretching, and my knuckles, I don't like the way it feels. I don't think I'm going to be able to stretch this out the same way that I can with my other finger. You can see my pinky's not wanting to respond. They're just kind of staying there and being pulled. I like this a lot at the moment. I'm not so convinced about those. So for finger health and finger healing, I picked up 2 different levels, a 3-pound and a 7-pound Grip Master, specifically the Rehabilitation Pro Hands model. Now, these are, little hand squeezy devices, but each finger is individually springed, allowing you to not, supplement or have other fingers take the brunt of the squeeze when trying to rehab something like your pinky. And you can see my pinky is definitely not squeezing the same way that my other one can. I mean, this pinky can join forces here and squeeze down, whereas this pinky here, it really just does not have the same level of strength. These have been really nice. I actually carry these around with me and just every now and then sit down, pull it out, and give it a couple squeezes. Again, not enough that I'm hurting or creating, muscle tension or damage, but just enough that my hand is working, that I'm getting blood flowing through, that I'm moving, and not exasperating the issue by bending and using my elbow, but still moving and getting, getting all of these muscles, all of these tendons, all of this supportive ligature. I don't think that's a word. Just getting it all involved and helping. Finally, the last thing that I will point out is some medication. I'm not a big advocate for taking medication, and of course, it can be risky if you have other medications that you commonly take or you're taking too much of it, so please read and be mindful of anything that you put into your body or any work that you do based off this advice, of course. But Advil or another NSAID, NSAID, something that reduces swelling in the body, will tend to help with something like a pinched nerve because there usually is some degree of inflammation and some degree of damage and swelling that's happening that's exacerbating or causing the problem. So that's where we are. I'm about a month and a half into the healing process, doing my best to be mindful and recover. I anticipate that I'm going to be utilizing all of these items for maybe the rest of my life, but at least for the better part of the next 3 to 6 months while I fully restore and hopefully strengthen and reinforce the area of my arm that's been damaged. I did not know at the time that I would wake up with no feeling in my fingers, so it was quite the shock when it happened. I actually have had some cubital tunnel damage in my other arm, which is why I didn't rush out to a doctor or anything, because I've been to a doctor talking about it before for photography, having caused, again, lasting damage in my arm. This was rehabbed, and I spent a lot of time just not using it, and that was enough to actually heal it. However, my left hand was way worse than my right hand had ever been. My right hand was due to lifting a camera up like this some 500,000 times in a single year, taking photos at weddings across the country. But I was able to diagnose exactly what was causing the inflammation and immediately stopped doing that motion. I'd use my other arm to adjust, which could be one of those habitual things that actually made the left hand a little bit more at risk. So be aware. And if you find yourself feeling any numbness, any tingling, any funny bone-like sensations when you lean, bump, or adjust your body in a strange way, those are warning signs you should not ignore because, man, the last little bit and the next little bit of just being inconvenienced and in pain and constantly mindful that my arms and my hands aren't functioning as well as they should has been really difficult. It's been hard to type. It's been hard to do dishes. It's been hard to pick up my camera and do my job. And it's been hard to, sit at a game table and be entirely comfortable. So there you have it. There's all the knowledge, all the information, all the research that I've spent, and some insights into what the healing process for at least me has been like. I hope some people find this video useful and informative and gives them resources because I spent a lot of time and was very dismayed and kind of bogged down by the lack of information out there. So I thought I'd make something that would have helped me had I discovered it after someone else had already produced it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Whatever the case, though, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Still sit down and play games. It's worthwhile. Just do so responsibly. Take care of your body. Getting older is not easy. We'll see you next time. Bye.